if you struggle with stress, anxiety, depression, any version of stress, I invite you to listen to this episode. This episode, we're not going to be talking about stress from the perspective that you may have heard already, but from a very different perspective, from a brain perspective and also from a spiritual perspective. So stay tuned.
Hello, visionaries. Welcome to Create Your Vibrant Life podcast, where you can create the life you desire by tapping into your inner wisdom. I'm your host, Padma Ali. I'm widely known in the field of psychology to create long-lasting transformation. And now, I'm here to help you create the life you desire using a combination of neuropsychology and ancient healing practices. This podcast is for you, evolved, overachieving leader who's ready to unlock your highest potential. I'm here to guide you through a process of self-discovery to be the creator of your destiny. And you can do all of that by just taking aligned actions, tapping into the power of your brain, your inner wisdom, and ancient practices. So stay tuned, folks. I am so delighted you are here.
All right, visionaries, how are you all? So today we're going to be talking about stress, specifically how to live a stress-free life. Now, we all know that stress is not really good for creating whatever you want, creating your vibrant life. And in this episode, we're not going to be covering stress in the typical perspective of why stress is bad for you and what it does to your body and your health and heart condition and God knows research that is there on stress. We're not talking about that, but we're going to be talking about how you can live a stress-free life and understanding stress from a brain perspective, like what really happens in your brain that causes you to get into stress. And then also a very spiritual perspective on what stress actually does to your manifestation power. So whatever you do, take notes for this episode, share this episode, because this is going to help a lot of people because there's so many people right now under stress. I mean, everywhere you look and you listen to media, you're going to get stressed. You look at any news activity, it literally sucks the hope out of you when you hear any of the news that's going on with everything that's happening in the world. And if you're already prone to anxiety or depression, what happens is that when you listen to these things, it exacerbates your symptoms because on an unconscious level, you're buying all that, for lack of better word, I'm just going to use the word SHIT, if any of your kids are listening, because I know some of your kids listen to this stuff. So what happens is that when we listen to these things in the world, consciously or unconsciously, we absorb the information, and that results in adding or exacerbating stress or anxiety, whatever you want, whatever you're experiencing. And we all know from a health perspective why stress is not good for you. And what we're going to be talking about in today's episode is whether it's even possible to live a stress-free life. And especially from a neuropsychology perspective, we're going to be covering like what really goes on in your brain around stress. So many of the things you may hear me say may not be new for you, but repetition is how we learn, and repetition is the key to mastery. And so we're going to be talking a lot about how to work with stress. And now, even if you don't get into stress, if you are a leader, you probably have people under you who do get into stress. I mean, if you have a working mother in your organization, and with all the things happening and schools are not functioning the way they have to and all that, you're going to have that stress come into your organization. So anything that I share with you today is going to be helpful for you or someone else in your life. So let's break it all down, okay? So let's talk about how do you even get, like what happens? How does stress even come about? In simple terms, stress is something you learn or you have learned watching your caregivers or watching people in your life get into stress when you were a child. Yes, simple words, you learned how to be stressed out. I was talking to a family member some time ago, and she said to me that she gets into worry a lot and how she was worried about this and she was worried about that and this is what's happening and blah, 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 blah. And I was asking her, what makes you get into so much worry, and is worry even going to solve anything for you? And she said to me, which was so interesting, and I'm not judging, by the way, and I don't get into judgments. I'm just sharing all of this so that it can help all of you. And also, by the way, I'm not immune to this. I used to live from a place of stress and anxiety pretty much all the time. Well into my 20s, I used to get into panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and I used to really get into so much fear and anxiety. So I am not immune to all of this. But I learned higher ways of functioning, higher ways of being. Now I very, very rarely get into worry or stress. There's no point, and you'll hear why and how to work with it. So going back to what I was telling you about my family members, she said, I have to worry. I was like, what do you mean? She said, if I don't worry, I have to worry. This was her words. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, you have to worry? Well, what will I do if I don't worry? And I'm chuckling, but it is true. It's like what she was in essence telling me was that she didn't know how to live a life without worry. And this was a long time ago, so I'm paraphrasing some of these things. But the bottom line is she really did not know how to live life without worry. And that may be a lot of you. You may not know how to get off the stress train. You may know that stress is not really good for your systems, for your body systems or your mind or your brain. But you may not know any other way. It's like an automatic reaction to things. And that's exactly what a learned behavior is. We are no different than animals. Right? The classic Pavlovian experiment. He rang the bell, the dog started to salivate. Why? Because it was given a treat right after the bell rang. So it assumed that the moment the bell rang, I'm going to get a treat. So in anticipation, it starts salivating. You get the point. And that is what stress is. You learned that XYZ happens in your environment, which is outside of your control. Let me get into worry. Let me get into stress. And you will start to notice after today's episode, I invite you to notice the language a lot of times people use. I am worried about XYZ. I'm so concerned. What will happen when this happens? Or I am really so nervous about this. I'm really worried about how we're going to do this. You will notice this kind of language, and if you call it to someone's attention, most likely they're not even conscious that they're using words like these. Now, why is this important? Why am I stressing on this? Language, like Rumi said, is words are the drippings of your mind. This is what's happening in your mind, and it's all being funneled out through your mouth into words, and we speak our life into existence. Right? We speak our life into existence with our words. Think about it. You're listening to me on a device. That device was created in someone's head first. It came up as an image, then it became some thoughts. And then, or whatever, right? Like it became thoughts, and then eventually it was produced in the physical world. I'm talking to you on a podcast microphone. This was in someone's head. I have my water bottle in front of me. That wasn't someone's head. I have a pen in front of me. You get the point. It starts with your thoughts. Now, if you're going to use sentences and phrases and words like, I am worried, I am concerned, I am this, I am that, what do you think you're doing? You are telling your brain and your mind that, oh, I have to get into worry, something's going to go wrong. And one of these days, I'm going to talk a little bit about where your attention is. This is something I learned from the shaman I work with, DX. He says, you are where your attention is. Wherever you place your attention is what expands, is what gets created. And if your attention is on worry, stress, and things not working out, this is exactly what's going to come out into your world. And in this episode, I'm really going to demonstrate to you how when you get into worry, it stops you from manifesting the life you want. Okay, so let's talk about, where was I? I got a little off train of thought. Squirrel brain, I forgot to turn my phone off, and I have a text that came in, and I'm like, oh, what is that? I forgot that I forgot to turn my cell phone off. I was like, what is that texting? Anyways, okay, you can tell, right? I have squirrel brain sometimes. So we were talking about words and phrases that people use. So be a hawk when it comes to your thoughts. You have heard me say this, and I am going to repeat it ad nauseum because that's how we learn, through repetition. It's not just you, it is me too. I have sticky notes. I am not even kidding you. If you follow me on Instagram, you will see I have sticky notes everywhere. I keep affirmations and reminders for myself on keeping me on track. Otherwise, I can easily get into that spiral of negative thoughts too. I just don't allow space for it anymore. So notice language, notice your people around you. How do they speak about things? What are they using? What phrases are they using? What words are they using? And anytime you hear words like, I am worried, I am concerned, I am fearful, all that just indicates stress. And if you ask them to tell you how they feel when they're talking about worrying and fearful, they will tell you, my body doesn't feel good. But most people are not aware. What they do is they just get into it and then they move on. And then they live out their feelings and their experiences. They just live from that place. So what makes us get into stress when we know it is not helpful? Like I said, it is learned behavior, and it's also conditioning. Conditioning. You have been conditioned to have a stress response. I learned this from watching my grandmother. I spent some time with her when I was little, and I used to watch her get into stress and anxiety and worry. And as a child, we don't know any better, and so that's what we take on, right? We get into fear and stress. And as humans, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus in my family, but what I'm saying is that each one of us learns this, and we learn it from another generation above us, and that's what happened. My grandmother probably learned it from her family, right? But the bottom line is, as human beings, we want to be in control. It is part of our nature to want to be in control, but we all know control is an illusion. Control doesn't exist. We are. I don't mean it in this way, but this is the word that comes in. But we are foolish to think that we have any control. I don't know what's going to happen a minute from now, but we live life as though we're going to live forever. And so innately, we have this desire to be in control, to want to control our environment. And when we can't, we learn stress. And because it's a learned behavior, the good news is it's easy to unlearn. Well, I don't know if it's easy or not, that depends on you, but you can unlearn stress. I used to watch my grandmother get into so much worry and stress, and I would just watch her get anxious and anxious and anxious. I mean, like we would be late from school for like 10 minutes, and I would see her pacing up and down, like just everything would stress her out, would get her worried. And I was always an empath. And as an empath, especially as a little child, you just absorb everything. So I just became conditioned to get into worry, get into stress, get into panic. Like everything would stress me out. I mean, this is a funny example, but like I'm telling you, this is how I used to live my life. I am not immune to any of these things. So I cannot teach you anything that I haven't lived through. So this is really funny, but it is true. So this was back in 2000. I had just gotten my LASIK surgery done. You know what LASIK is? It's that eye surgery to correct your eyesight. I had a poor eyesight as a child. And so by the time I got into my 20s, my eyesight was super poor. And so my husband was like, oh, you know what? Part of our insurance, you get LASIK done. Do you want to get a LASIK done? I was like, oh, okay, fine, whatever. I'll get it done. I was like, great, as long as I never have to wear contact lenses again or glasses again. I'm like, great, I'll do it. I had no idea what was entailed in getting a LASIK surgery done. This is really funny. I'm digressing, but I'll come back to this. It's a funny story. So I go to they walk me through the pre-op procedure and whatever. I was like, great, no problem, I'll do it, not a big deal. I didn't fully understand what was involved. All I knew is they were going to do something to my cornea. Perfect, great, great eyesight, right? I'm all in. So I go to the appointment and I go in there and there's the chair that you have to sit in, or you kind of lie down, and then there's another chair right next to it, and there's this old woman sitting there. I think an old woman. And I was like, hi. I was like, okay, who are you? I have no idea who you are. And so she introduces herself saying, I'm a volunteer for this practice, and I'm going to hold your hand. I was like, I don't need any hand holding. I was in my 20s, and the things I did in my 20s. I'm not, everything is a learning experience. It's funny. I was like, I don't need any hand holding. She said, no worries. I'm just going to sit here. If you need me, I'm here. I was like, okay. And then they brought the whole equipment in. This is not what I was saying about worry and anxiety, by the way. This is just a side story to entertain you all. So they bring the instrument, and it's like this thing that slices your cornea. Okay, if any of you don't know what LASIK is, please don't go watch any videos because it is freaking traumatic. So as it comes closer, and they're like, don't move your eyes, don't move your eyes. God, it was scary as hell. And so the woman sitting next to me, I held her hand. This is me saying, I don't need to hold anybody's hand. I held her hand and I squeezed it so hard. It was not even funny. And I was like, I am never doing this again. It was such a traumatic experience. I mean, it is 22 years later, and I still have good eyesight, except at night. Like it's a little harder to see in the night vision, but overall it's really good. I'm like, glad I got it done. So post-op, this is the part about worry and stress and wanting to control. So they gave some eye drops that you have to put, and you keep your eyes closed for some time, whatever, right? So I used to get into so much control that the eye drops had to be put in a particular manner. Otherwise, I would freak out because I was operating from a place of, if I don't control this, something's going to happen to my eyesight. Worry, right? And my poor husband back then, It's amazing how our marriage has like worked for 23 years. The things I used to get into, I mean, both of us, we have both grown and matured in ways that's amazing. But I was like, I would freak out if you put the drop, there were 3 drops, 2 different types of drops you had to put. And I was like, if you put one drop before the other, I would freak out because I was trying to control my environment. And why the control happens is because of fear. And, like when we would go on vacation, I would have to plan every single thing that we would do on that vacation. And he'd be like, I want to sleep in. And I was like, sleeping? No, we're not going to sleep. We're not coming all the way here to sleep. I don't do that anymore, guys. I've really changed, I promise. I can laugh at myself. I was like, who the heck was this person? Oh my goodness. I had to pack like days in advance because of control. And control happens because we get into fear. I used to get into fear. Oh, if I don't do this, if I don't pack on time, I am going to forget this. And then when I get there, I'm not going to have this. Okay? Or if I don't take care of this, whatever, eye drop at this time, something's going to happen to my eyesight. Or if I don't get to the airport 1,000 hours before the flight leaves, I'm going to miss the flight. I'm exaggerating. But you get the point. It all comes from fear. Under stress is fear. Until you live from a place of fear, your stress level is not going to go down. Okay? So tying it back to everything I was saying so far, I learned how to be anxious. I learned how to be stressed out. And if you get into anxiety and stress, trust me, you probably learned it from someone in your life, watching them. Even if they didn't say a word, you watch that person. As a child, you are a sponge. God, it's really funny. Okay, just talking about sponges. My daughter, my 5-year-old, comes back and she's like, do you know the Pledge of Allegiance? I was like, I think so. And then she puts her hand on her heart and then she starts to recite it. And I was like, do you even understand what the Pledge of Allegiance is? What are you pledging your allegiance to? I was cracking up. Okay, she learned the whole thing. She said, I don't know what it is. But she learned the whole thing. This is what we do. We are sponges at that young age. We just take everything on. I used to watch my parents get into worry and stress about money, even if they would not say a word to me. I would hear it, right? I would see it. I would watch it. This is how we learn. And not only this is really interesting, okay? The conditioning starts even before you are born, in utero. They did studies. I was looking up some studies from PubMed and Stanford. They both have published articles that show the impact of stress in utero towards cognitive development. Your cognitive development gets impacted if you're exposed to stress in utero. And not only that, if you have your socioeconomic background also determines whether the stress impacts you more than another person who's going through the same stress. One of the experiments that they did, one of the studies, they followed a group of children who were exposed to stress with an earthquake in San Francisco. And depending on your socioeconomic status, the level of stress changed as the child grew. The impact on the cognitive development changed as a result of the exposure to stress, whether you had economic hardship or not. So many factors play a role. But the bottom line is stress impacts you in ways that you may not even know. I will give you some specific tools to deal with this, okay? So I'm just giving you the impact of how we learn stress. And when we learn it, we can unlearn it. This is the big takeaway I want you to take from this one thing. You can unlearn it. So from a brain level, let's talk about stress from a brain level. I told you this is not going to be like the other stress things that you may have heard, like, oh, what happens to your body when you're stressed? Nope. I'm going to talk about from the brain level. Why do we get into stress, especially if it's a learned behavior? So what happens? Think about your reaction to stress as the neurons in your brain firing, right? Something happens in your environment. Maybe you open a bill from something and you're like, oh my God, I don't have money in my bank account. You get into stress. Or one of the common sources in the past for me would be like, oh my God, I don't have childcare because my child is sick and like I can't send her to school or whatever. And I would get into stress about that. Now I'm like, I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Anyways, so what would happen is the brain starts firing neurons based on the environment, the triggers in your environment. It's literally your neurons firing, right? And when the stress neurons get fired, for example, it strengthens those neural pathways. It's no different than the dog barking when the doorbell rings. That's the cue, right? The doorbell rings is the cue. The dog starts barking. The neurons go, oh, okay, this is the environmental trigger. Let me start firing. Great. This is what happens in your brain on a brain level. And when this pathway is strengthened, it continues to strengthen, which means every time there's an environmental trigger, your neurons are going to be like, I need to fire. They're not going to even, it's a very automatic reaction. You know, like when I was a long, like 15 years ago, it was probably 15 or even close to like 17 years ago, I used to see a therapist for myself. And at that time, what would happen is when I would get into my anxiety and my stress, the way it would show up is overwhelm, and that overwhelm would turn into anger, like irritation, frustration, anger. And so she would often tell me, she would say, like every time you get angry, the grooves in your brain get stronger. It's like that path gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And she'll be like, you need to just quit it once and for all. Otherwise, that groove is going to be stronger and stronger and stronger. I didn't understand it. She didn't explain to me from a neuropsychology perspective. But now I get it, right? Like why she was telling me that long time ago. This is well established. You can look it up. Like this is what happens to your brain. So when you know that you are getting into stress, that pathway in your brain is getting strengthened every time you get into it. The more you get into stress, the more you're going to feel that you're going to get into more and more and more stress. The more stress, and also the more stressful situations you will encounter. What? Yes, the more stress you get into, the more stressful situations you will encounter. And you're going to be like, what are you talking about? Well, this is where I'm going to explain it from a spiritual perspective, from a frequency vibration perspective, and on how getting into stress can impact your reality, can impact the vibrant life you are trying to create. So first I want you to really grasp this concept, right? The stress neurons, what it does to your brain, how that pathway is strengthened. And in order for you to not get to stop having those neurons from firing, you literally have to stop your brain from firing those neurons. And we will talk about exact steps on how to not get into stress. But I want you to understand this from an understanding perspective, because the more you understand these things, the more you're going to put it into practice. All right. So, like I said, the more stress you get into, the more stressful situations you're going to encounter. And the reason being, now I'm going to explain it from a spiritual perspective. What happens is, well, in order to explain that, I have to explain frequency and vibration first. So we all have thoughts, right? And I already established to you everything that you have around you is created from thought. Every single thing. Even this podcast episode first came from a thought, right? And every thought has a vibration to it. Everything in your life has a vibration. The device you're listening to has a vibration. The desk I'm sitting on has a vibration. Everything has a vibration. Your inanimate objects and the animate objects, everything has vibrations to it. And those vibrations create then frequency. So let me back up here. Your thoughts create emotions first. So think about it. Every time you get into any kind of emotional response, whether it's happiness, joy, love, or anger, frustration, sadness, anything has a thought behind it. The emotions have a thought behind it. And those emotions have vibration and frequency. And those vibration and frequency attracts certain events, people to you. And that in turn creates your reality. Okay, so I'm going to bring it all back together. So your thoughts create emotions, and they create vibration and frequency, and that brings reality to you, or you start creating a reality around you based on how you're feeling in that moment. I'm going to take it to I'm going to digress slightly and then bring it back together, because this digression is going to explain this a little bit better to you. So have you noticed that when children want something, they make it happen super fast? If you have a child in your home, you probably know what I'm talking about. They're like, I want ice cream. And then the next thing you know, like somehow they're getting ice cream. Either you bought them, someone else bought them. Somehow they're getting what they want. My kids are notoriously amazing manifestors. They'll want something within a few days. Sometimes it takes a few months, but whatever. It shows up at their doorstep, at our doorstep. Children are amazing manifestors. Why? Have you ever wondered why? Most children manifest anything that they want. Especially, if you are listening to this podcast and you have a child, your child is probably a good manifester. I'm not talking about everyone in the world, because again, your conditioning will make a difference. But if you're listening to this podcast, which means you resonate with me, which means that your children are probably, in that category, and they are amazing manifestors. And they get what they want because apply this, guys. Like, it's really fabulous when you watch them, and you can apply to your own life. Children are amazing teachers for us. They are super clear in their thoughts. They don't question. Hey, I want this. Do I deserve this? Am I worthy of this? Do I need this? Oh my goodness. They do not get into any of that stuff. They want it. They just want it. And they are clear that it is going to come to them. Somehow they're going to get it. Either they're going to pester the heck out of you, like my kids, but I don't give in most of the time. Or somehow it comes to them. It's like when you buy from Amazon, or you're expecting a delivery, that thing is going to show up. And if it doesn't, whoever you bought it from is either going to ship you a new one, or they're going to give you a refund. Either ways, you get what you ordered for, right? It's the same thing with children. When they want something, they're pretty clear they're going to get it. So they don't question, are you worthy? Am I this? Am I that? And so it just is. And, despite doing this work for so many years, right, on myself, with my clients, like this is how I live my life. Even then, the old conditioning will show up. Absolutely, it does. And so, start to really look at your life and go, where do you get into this? Okay? Do you fully trust that when you want something, you will have it? Or do you get into, oh my God, I'm spending so much? You get into money issues, money issues are nothing but self-worth issues, which we will cover another episode. Do you get into like, I can't have that, it's too much, it's not possible? Do you get into all of those things? Notice, the first thing is awareness, okay? So let us bring it back together, right? When your thoughts are clear, like children's thoughts are clear, they're vibrating on that level and frequency, which allows these objects or whatever material things they want to come to them. Right? When your thoughts are clear, the vibrations are clear, the emotions are clear, there's excitement, there's trust, right? And that frequency delivers that to you. And it's not just objects, by the way, it's experiences you have. Has there been a time in your life where suddenly someone's popped up into your life who's like really helped you get to the next level? Or you're in dire need of help and someone just shows up and you're like, wow, you are the person I've been waiting for to help me get to this place, right? Or a situation comes up where suddenly now it's solving a lot of the things you're dealing with. And that is because, again, your thoughts, your emotions, keeping them clear is going to attract everything you want. Now, when you apply that to stress, okay, you're stressed out about something in life. Most people are stressed out about work, money, relationships, career. This is what they're worried about. And that relationships will cover both intimate relationships and other relationships in your life, right? Most of the time, this is where people get stuck on worrying and fearful and all of that. Now, you're worried about something, a situation or something is causing you stress. Those thoughts are creating those emotions of stress emotions, and those emotions are creating the vibrations of like that frequency, and vibration is much lower when it comes to certain emotions like worry and stress and fear and shame and guilt. All of those emotions have very low frequency and vibration. Now you are emanating those frequencies and vibration. You are like a beacon, and then that is going to attract more and more of those same thoughts, those same things back to you. Which means those situations and people are going to come into your life that add more to your stress than subtract. So, is this making sense? Your stressful thoughts is the vibration you're putting out. The emotions and of worry and stress. Notice how that even makes you feel when you get into worry and stress. That is the frequency you're putting out there. And what do you think that's going to attract? More stressful situations in your life. You are a magnet. You're constantly attracting things into your life. So, notice, be aware. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Is that working for you? How does it feel? Do you want it? Do you not want it? Be aware. All right? Okay. I want to make sure that you get all of these things from a brain perspective. I know this episode is slightly longer than what I anticipated, but I really want you to get this. And please, 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 please share this with friends and family, because here is my agenda with this. I will be transparent with you. We are a collective. What I feel and think impacts people around me. It's like a ripple effect. Okay, think about all of us sitting on a. Have you seen a cobweb? And have you seen a little insect trapped in a cobweb? Now, with the spiders moving towards the trapped insect, the whole web starts shifting and changing and vibrating, meaning you can notice the physical shifts in the web. I'm not even talking about it from a spiritual place, okay? This is just physically, you can see that, okay? You and I are all part of that same web. How you feel impacts me. How I feel impacts you. And you don't believe me? Go look up experiments done on this. How I feel, okay, I'll demonstrate that for you in just a second. And you'll be like, yep, this has happened to me. Okay, you're thinking about somebody and suddenly they call you. How did that happen? You're like, I was just thinking about you. Oh my God. Or you're thinking about doing something and something related to what you're doing, what you want to do, shows up. How do you think that's happening? We're all interconnected. We are very, very connected. You may not even see that. I'll give you another example. If you are tuned in spiritually, not even spiritually, if you're tuned in, if you can sense energy is what I was trying to say. And you walk into a room and you're like, oh my God, like I don't feel good here. I don't like this. Okay. Have you walked into a mall sometimes and go like, oh, I just need to get out of here? What you're doing is sensing. You're sensing energies. Okay. So this is really vital. Please pay attention to this. You and I are connected. We're all connected. And when we can change and shift in ways, we can all live from a place of peace and well-being and happiness. It's going to impact the whole planet. And right now the planet things are happening here that are pretty chaotic. I mean, look all around you. It is real pure chaos. So when you share this episode, when you have other people listen to this in your life, what you're doing is impacting that web. Okay? And so the more people when we can live from a place of well-being and joy, it is going to impact everything around us. That is my agenda. I'm being transparent with you. This is why I do these episodes. These episodes are not easy to make, meaning I have to spend time thinking. I want to bring in content that is going to impact you, not just like talk because I want to talk. Even the example I gave you, which I was digressing and talking about my LASIK surgery, it is entertaining, but you know what? When you laugh, you're absorbing the information on a very different level. And I go with the flow. I literally, like, these things pop into my head and this is how I roll. I sense and I keep going. And if I can do it, you can too. So it's vital. Please, I am not asking you to share for me. I don't care about the number of downloads I get, really, other than the fact that, okay, good, I'm reaching more people. That's my only agenda. To reach more people, to raise the vibration on this planet. This is my way of giving back because I know not everyone's going to be able to work with me. And I only have capacity to work with certain number of people and also the people who can afford to work with me, right? And I'm very happy charging what I charge because it is how I keep all of this going. And I provide immense value to my clients. You can ask any of my clients, they will tell you that. Most of my clients will say that how they have shifted and changed is even to them, it's like, wow, who was I before this? And I am taking zero credit for all of this, guys. I'm totally digressing here at this point, but I am not taking any credit for this. It's what is coming through me, to you. So these podcast episodes are my way of giving back to the world, to the community. And if I can impact one more person through this, I am so grateful. And you will be part of that chain. And you're not doing it for me. You're doing it for you. Because when you can make an impact on another person, guess what? You reap the benefits, not me. I don't care. It doesn't come to me. You reap the benefits. The more people you can impact, the more you are going to get benefits as well. So please share. And while you're at it, leave me a review. Like, that's your way of giving back to me too for listening to these episodes. If you have found value, please write a positive review for me. Again, not for me. I don't care about these things. It just brings this higher up in the whatever algorithms or whatever of podcasting. That's the only reason I even ask you to do that. Anyways, let's come back to this. Okay, so I want to make sure that you truly get it. If not, rewind and listen to it again and again and again. From a brain perspective, why we get into stress. The neural pathways, they're meant to keep working till you stop them. We're going to talk about how to stop them. And then from a spiritual perspective, what happens when you get into stressful thoughts is that you attract more stressful situations in your life. There's a reason they have phrases or sayings like, when it rains, it pours. No, when it rains, it pours because of you. I'm joking, but I'm not. But it is you who has created that. When you can take full on responsibility for yourself, starting with your thoughts, everything in your life is going to change. Oh goodness, I'm on a roll today, guys. I tell you, I just have an outline, and whatever comes through me comes through me. Like I'm just speaking. So I really want you to grasp that. Okay, so let's now talk about some practical solutions of dealing with stress. What can you do to stop those damn neural pathways from firing so that you don't continue to give in to that? Okay, so the way to stop the neural pathways, first thing is awareness. Bring awareness to noticing when you get into stress, what are common themes, what are those button pushers for you, like what is the thing that makes you bark, right? What is the doorbell that makes you bark? Because as long as you have that doorbell within you, you're going to keep barking. Meaning, as long as you have those buttons within you. For me, like one of my things was like, oh my God, no childcare. Then I would go into the spiral of like, then I have to keep her, and how am I going to do my work, and how am I going to do this, and all of those things would just send me on a spiral, right? But awareness is the key. Where are you getting into those button pushing things? Are you numbing the pain? Are you numbing the feelings? Notice that. And the second one, once you have the awareness, you can just stop those thoughts. The moment you're aware of those thoughts, this is called pattern interrupt in neuro-linguistic programming. You just interrupt those patterns. Just stop those thoughts. Saying, okay, I'm noticing these stressful thoughts come up. These are just thoughts. I am not giving into it. I am going to stop it right now. Okay? And then when you stop those thoughts, you can literally change your emotional state by moving your attention to something more grounding, more peaceful, more calm, more joy. Sometimes for me, like if I have to change my thoughts or change my emotions, I am not immune to it, guys. I still can get into it. I still at times wake up at 3 a.m. with like anxiety pounding in my heart. And I'm like, what the heck? I thought I worked through this, right? But it is day-to-day work. It is everyday work. These things will not stop because those neural pathways are always going to be present in your brain. You just have to not give it any more fodder so that the pathway stops working. So when I get into this, what I do is sometimes I will just move. I will put on music. I will dance. I will go for a walk. I will go play with my kids. Sometimes I just have to go drink water, or I look out the window. I will do things to just move my attention. Now, I'm not saying you need to distract yourself from what is triggering you, because you need to look at those triggers. But find a time and place to look at those triggers. Sit in meditation and ask for what does these triggers mean and how can I work with them? Because until you work through those triggers are always going to be present. Okay? But that may not be the time to do it. That may not be the time to go digging, right? There's a time and space for when you can do that digging. With my clients, we go into it because we want to clear the energetic imprints from the past. Usually digging means going into the past. And I personally, even though I did therapy for like 20 some years, that is not where I feel biggest transformation happens. The transformation happens when you go into the past with the pure intention of shifting the emotional and the energetic imprint associated with the past. Okay, so change your emotion into a state of well-being, to a state of peace, and do whatever you need to do that. When you can recognize that stress does not serve you, then you will do everything in your capacity to change the stressful thoughts, because that's all it is. It is just a thought. It is not real. Stress is imagined. What did they say about fear? False evidence appearing real. You all have heard that story where this person is walking in the dark and he sees this thing on the ground and he's like, oh my God, it's a snake. It looks like a snake. It must be a snake. He's frozen. And then when the light comes on, he sees it's just a piece of rope. this is pretty much what happens. I am not saying to ignore any physical, if you are in danger of any kind, I'm not saying to ignore that, but most of the time, fear is just in your head. If you confront the fear, when you confront the fear, it will go away. So, I know this was a very long episode, but I really wanted to cover this because stress is so prevalent these days, guys, and it's impacting you in ways that you may not even know how it's impacting in the long run. So we all know the physical impact of stress. Now let's look at the emotional and the ability to create part of stress. All right, so that brings us that we're almost about to end. Again, I just wanted to remind you all that in case you have anyone in your life that could benefit from working with me one-on-one, please, only serious applicants, please reach out to me. It's all in the show notes, how to reach out to me and to see if we're a good fit to work together, because I'm not a good fit for everyone and everyone is not a good fit for me. So I'm looking for someone who's really dedicated and who is willing to commit to this work for a good amount of time, because it takes anywhere between 5 and 6 months to really start to notice significant changes in your life. So that brings us to this end of this episode. Please, you know where to find me, and thank you so much for being such an integral part of our journey. And I will talk to you next episode.
Thank you so much for listening. I have a request for you. If you found value, chances are that your friends and family will too. So if you can leave a positive review on iTunes, it will help reach so many more people. And if you have any topics or questions you would like me to feature, please send them to support@padmaali.com. And lastly, please share your takeaways and breakthroughs with me on Instagram @PadmaAli. Thank you so much for tuning in.